In 1995, an engineer from Akron, Ohio sat down in his home and built a weapon. This weapon is smaller than a bullet, can be smuggled across any national border undetected, and after its publication to the World Wide Web, changed the course of the 21st century. This is the story of the most powerful weapon ever built, and the quiet war for its control. James Dalton Bell's 1995 blog post, Assassination Politics, is a strange read. The basic premise is this. For a fee, any contributor can place a bet on when a certain individual will die. A sports club Deadpool, in other words. But Assassination Politics makes two further distinctions. First, the contributors will remain anonymous via the use of cryptographic technology. And second, pools will only include corrupt government officials, with the full sum of the pool being awarded to whoever can guess that individual's exact date of death in advance. Or as Bell called it, an assassination market. Bell rooted his system in the non-aggression principle, the libertarian ideal that you do not attack anyone who hasn't first attacked you, and that you only respond with force in kind. Bell argued that by holding a public office, any politician or government employee who violates the rights of their constituents violates the non-aggression principle, and does so at a scale of unlimited force, thus justifying the use of force against that official as self-defense on the part of their constituents. But was it wise for Bell to specify ATF agents as viable targets? No, it was not. Now, Bell proposed that some central organization host a public death pool for any such violators, where anyone could place a standard wager amount to prevent spoofing, and a guess as to that violator's date of death, with all wagers going towards the main pool. All wagers would be made via encrypted digital cash so that contributors would remain fully anonymous. The second encryption envelope within the cash envelope would hold the guess encrypted with a second private key. These encrypted guesses would be stored until the violator's date of death, at which point anyone would be able to send in the public key for their guess, and if that guess just so happened to be correct, collect the entire prize pool. It's a fascinating idea. The concept shares a lot in common with prediction markets, actually being one-to-one in some places, such as the idea for wagers to guarantee honest guesses. Prediction markets were in limited use at the time, including DARPA's Future Map project. The real difference, however, is the implication that participants should try to sway the odds in their favor, functioning a little more like life insurance fraud than a prediction market. You just, don't say the quiet part out loud. Jim Bell, for whatever reason, decided to say the quiet part out loud. In fact, he said all of the quiet parts out loud, including his honest belief that the weapon would have a disproportionate effect on target, by which I mean as soon as one pool is successfully cashed out, it would set a brand new precedent for how the public deals with corrupt officials. In Bell's mind, the market system would become a mimetic virus of sorts. There wouldn't be any effective containment method where average people in London, Moscow, and New York City would be able to strike directly at the previously unimpeachable corruption, choking them. No border or bill would be able to stop the wild hunt. No judge would be able to prosecute the process without laying themselves before the scourge, and no politician could demonize it without looking over their shoulder. No military would have enough arms to hold down the rabid world as it began to struggle for its freedom. It's ugly in its elegance, weaponizing discontent, democracy, and disunity alike. I don't consider it hyperbole to say that this is the most powerful weapon ever constructed, if only because it could dismantle the mechanism that makes war possible on a social scale. Political corruption would no longer be a viable strategy, either shrinking the government to extinction or forcing it to evolve into a radical new form of democracy. Jim Bell was terrified and excited by the concept. To quote the man himself, "Maybe I'm a bit premature to say it, but I'm satisfied we will be free. I'm convinced there is no alternative. It may feel like a roller coaster ride on the way there, but As of today, I think our destination is certain. Please understand, we will be free. The IRS promptly ruined Jim Bell's life, subjecting him to violent extortion, illegal search and seizure, harassment, illegal surveillance, and a trial which independent sources described as a complete farce. Allegedly. He was defamed as a terrorist and imprisoned until 2009. Now, Jim Bell did not invent assassination markets. He stated as much in his original blog post, and I agree. He co-opted the tactics of his greatest enemy. The base concept of the assassination market is a system where contributors can give their support for an act of violence without taking responsibility for the end result, usually by delegating the action to some higher or adjacent power. In summary, you contribute to someone's death and directly benefit from it with no legal repercussions. So, pure evil, right? Not even mildly permissible under any moral or legal standard, and not something which any civilized society would ever allow. So we can call it there, right? After all, wouldn't these markets be used to target normal, everyday people? Why shouldn't this strange tomorrow weapon be put back in its box and left alone? Well, because it's already in play. Normal, innocent people are being murdered every single day, and there's no turning back now. The face of conflict has split wide with an ugly grin. This candle is lit. The genie is out of the bottle. The party is on, and you're not invited. Now, public assassination markets have never seen a successful use. The last real example was Sanjuro's market in 2013, which went defunct within 2 years with 0 successful cash-outs. Most likely the typical darknet market hitman scam, if I had to really guess. No, I'm talking about private markets. The ones you're not allowed to see, the ones which are generally called collateral damage or unfortunate circumstances. Now, when the ATF wanted to push a new rule concerning and ultimately obliterating private firearms sales, was it cheaper for them to run a years-long ad campaign, sift through paperwork, and whinge about off-book sales to the media? Or just, conveniently screw up an arrest on an airport director, murder him in his home, and make no attempt to silence the subsequent media storm from news channels targeted towards gun owners? When 2 corporate whistleblowers battling one of the most powerful defense contractors on Earth both died within weeks of each other, how many executives, lobbyists, contractors, corpos, and congressmen quietly benefited with no legal repercussions? And let's just say that, hypothetically, if the cameras in a certain high-value human trafficker's cell just shut off all on their own, and if he hypothetically decided to, take the opportunity to, you get the idea. How much would that result, hypothetically, be worth to his former associates? Allegedly. What is it called when you incentivize someone's death and legally profit from it? Good business, democracy made manifest, an assassination market. What I'm trying to illustrate is that Jim Bell stole the gods' fire and gave it to the world, and the gods were not amused. Now, I promised you the story of a quiet war, and a quiet war there has been. But this isn't a war fought with assassination markets. The conflict to suppress and gatekeep them is just a small, visible symptom. But without that lens, the conflict really just looks like every government and corporation all suddenly shrinking back from public view all at once. Politics has become an increasingly closed source operation over the last 30 years. Let me ask, do you personally have any idea what your government is doing or why? The private sector is no better, with private equity taking huge swaths of the market out of the publicly traded eye, and media corporations turning the news into an endless wall of contradictory, irrelevant slop. The average Joe is left with only so many options for reliable information, one of which happens to be prediction markets, the white-collar MIT grad cousin of assassination markets. Remember the DARPA Future Map project which I mentioned earlier? It was a prediction market launched in 2001, intended to seek public input on the likelihood of certain world events and guide government policy. And in 2003, senators labeled it a terror market, where they claimed, falsely, that people would be able to bet on terrorist attacks and that terror groups would use those betting pools to profit from their own attacks. Despite a scathing retort from the project leader, it was shut down, stalling public development of the idea until the late 2010s. Private corporations jumped on the opportunity in the meantime, with the Prediction Market Industry Association launching in 2007, including the likes of Google, Eli Lilly, and certainly not your broke ass. Throughout this, the CFTC kept a strict hold over the public side of the industry. Now, these markets are already uncomfortably close to assassination markets by the government's rather flawed reckoning. But that's not even the most dangerous part about them. They offer something even worse: free, unbiased information. Now, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, the most recognizable sign of this type of quiet, conflict, one-fought-for information is the withdrawal of any real information from the public so that they can't escape attempts to manipulate them. That's how information has always been disseminated on the world stage up until now, and the idea that it can suddenly rise from the ground up is seen as a looming threat to the hegemony. But there's a much larger wave looming on the horizon, a method for the public to conduct commerce free from the, mild and historically precedented inflation of the dollar, or the priced-in hellscape that is 20th century commodity trading. Now, the advent of two-key encryption excited Jim Bell. Cryptocurrency, however, was a foundational shift in value storage as we know it. So naturally, it's been neutered by regulations and turned into an opaque legal hell where the IRS, SEC, and CFTC all use different legal definitions, and where Know Your Customer laws require every exchange to collect the full legal identity of every user. Just recently, Coinbase's data was sold to malign actors, and that essentially gives criminals a list of who has the most crypto, where they live, and what time they're trading, or, for the layman among us, what time they're home. Cool. I'm so glad about this information. That is great. Cool. The United States even tried to sanction the Tornado Cash crypto washer, an autonomous smart contract, which for the layman among us is an equation. It's an equation. The sanctions were lifted in March of this year. To be clear, these are only two tiny, mostly anecdotal examples to illustrate something much larger happening beneath the cultural surface. But to my eyes at least, it looks like a massive shift in the way the world is organized and in how the organizers extract value from the organized. The tsunami of the new world is rapidly catching up to the old. And for all of its effort, the hegemony is still in an uncomfortable place. All of the pieces to build an assassination market are here, and they're better than ever. Encrypted private communications apps, open source satellite imaging, downloadable guns, killer drones, self-driving car bombs, money so smart it can launder itself. I don't know how anyone ever gets bored in a world like this. So, to say the quiet part out loud, what happens when someone promotes an assassination market on TikTok? What happens when someone builds a smart contract system that doesn't even need a central body to post the pools? What happens when a market is used to displace an entire city's government rather than requiring real violent force? In short, what happens when someone says the quiet part out loud? As old world power struggles to subjugate the rising new world, its defenses turn to information suppression, desperately trying to keep the weapons which could permanently destroy it out of the world's eager hands. We live in a time of digital nomads, anonymous communications, and real-time information transfer. A time when Jim Bell's dream that war becomes socially impossible is dangerously close to coming true. Is it wrong to become dangerous? Is it right to stand idly by? Do the people who wound you get any say in how you clean up the blood? It's not for me to say, of course. It's for you to ask yourself. But let me ask you this. Every age of history is defined by its greatest weapon. In the industrial age, it was logistical capacity that won wars and changed the face of the planet. In the following atomic age, nuclear technology made traditional war very nearly obsolete. And now, in the information age, what are the weapons going to be made of? And who's going to hold them?